finally, the state has to prove that the defendant or the co-conspirator acted with premeditation. So I'm going to talk to you about premeditation. You have a jury instruction for it, and it tells you that the defendant or the co-conspirator intended to kill another human being, or knew she or the co-conspirator would kill another human being, and that after forming that intent or knowledge, reflected on the decision before killing. It is this reflection, regardless of the length of time in which it occurs, that distinguishes first-degree murder from second-degree murder. You're also told an act is not done with premeditation if it is the instant effect of a sudden quarrel or heat of passion. This is where you remember those 12 minutes and the calmness of her walking around with that phone and her demeanor. You're told the time needed for reflection is not necessarily prolonged, and the space of time between the intent or knowledge to kill and the act of killing may be very short. So I'm going to give you an example. It's a lot of legalese, and then we'll talk about what we really have here. So imagine again, you are driving your car. You do every day, and you're coming up to an intersection and you see the light turn yellow. And in that second you think, do I want to run it? Or do I want to slam on my brakes and hit it? Stop before I go into the intersection. You think about that, and then you decide, I'm going to slam on my brakes, and I'm going to stop. That is the time it takes to reflect. That is the time it takes for premeditation. But we have a lot more than this because we have planning, not just premeditation that morning. So when we talk about the premeditation that we see, it starts at least back in June, when we have Christina telling us about Alex Cox saying that he wanted to kill Charles, Lori having no reaction to that, and instead talking about drugging Charles. Did you hear Alex making some comments?
Yes.
And you told us that they made you uncomfortable. What were these comments?
He stated he wished that he could just kill Charles.
Okay. Was Lori around when he was saying this?
Yes, one of the times.
Okay. So he said it more than once?
Yes.
Can you describe for us part of his demeanor when he's saying this about wanting to just kill Charles?
It was jocular, just as I recall, he was standing up and just talking about it pretty loudly.
And you said one of the times that he said this, it was around Lori.
Yes.
Did she react in any way to hearing her brother say that he wished he could just kill her husband?
Not that I recall.
By July 9th, or when we start having this planning that we're talking about, we know that Lori Vallow is living in a house paid for by Charles Vallow. We know from even her statements to Detective Enclan that she doesn't like Charles, is what she says, but Charles won't file for a divorce. We know from her words and text messages that she wants to be with Chad Daybell, but Charles is her cash cow. She hasn't worked. He pays rent, car, cell phones, her travel. And so, as far back as June 9th, we're already hearing that Alex and Lori would like to not just get rid of Charles, but kill him. But if you think that June 9th wasn't the beginning of this planning, this idea, this concept that Lori and her brother have of getting rid of Charles, this evil, dark, possessed person, that we know on the 9th that there is definitely a plan by this defendant. And we see that through those text messages with Melanie, with Summer, with Alex, where she speaks of the mission, where she talks about telling Melanie, you can't leave. You got to pretend to be sick and stay here and keep track of Brandon so he doesn't come help Charles. He can't be in the picture. We need to stay here to defend ourselves from an intervention. The 10th. Again, we have Melanie, who is talking to her and saying, that she wants to just go to this wedding. And what does Lori tell her? No, you have to stay here for the mission. The mission of stopping an intervention? No. As we continue through the 9th, we see Lori getting everyone lined up to help her. Alex, where he again is told that he will be like Nephi, just like her. Now Lori tells him it's an intervention. Everyone knows, Adam told you what's an intervention? It's talking to someone. It's common language. But that's not what the defendant wants to happen. She doesn't want Charles to divorce her and lose his money. She doesn't want this intervention to happen where she loses her temple recommend. What she wants is to be like Nephi and get rid of her husband.
Well, Nephi was a prophet in the Book of Mormon. It's the first chapter. He was a prophet, very humble and faithful servant of the Lord. Ironically enough, his brothers tried to kill him at one point. But he actually ended up going to Jerusalem to get these plates back, and he was run off, came back, and then went back again because the Lord asked him to. And when he did, the King Laban, who was actually a wicked king, was laying on the ground drunk in front of him, and Nephi was told to kill Laban.
Who was he told by?
The spirit, or God.
So God was using a Holy Spirit to tell him to kill Laban, and
Yes.
did he?
Yes, he did.
Was that something he anguished over?
Yes.
But ultimately, it was a justified killing.
Yes.
You heard from Detective Duncan that everyone he spoke with gave this same story. And again, the defendant questioned others about this story. But what we've heard is, from Detective Duncan and from Adam, that Nephi is this justified killing. When we think about her religious beliefs and what she's been telling people about not needing to repent, about telling people who is dark and evil, a zombie or a Z, that she is above the priesthood, it makes sense that she feels justified in determining who should live or die, just as she told her brother on the 9th. And we know that in fact we're talking about a justified killing because Alex brought a gun over. He didn't bring the Book of Mormon to talk to Charles about something. He didn't bring a friend to try to record Charles saying something. He brought a gun with him. And then he waited there for his sister's husband to come into the house so he could kill him. What we see is a very planned out, premeditated murder. But let's talk about some additional premeditation. Again, as we're looking at Summer, we see on the 10th that Lori is having her sister update her on where Adam and Zach are staying so she knows they're not with Charles. They're not coming over. They're not going to be interfering with their justified killing. And there's that 12-minute time where the defendant desperately wanted to rewrite the timeline as they told the police that day. This just happened. It was very quick, but it wasn't. It was 12 minutes. Charles arrives at 7:37 and Lori leaves at 7:49. During this time is when that plan, that premeditated murder occurred. So let's talk about that as well. The evidence at the scene, the physical evidence, supports this premeditated murder. Alex fired 2 shots. One of them went through Charles' center mast, exited out his back, and went into the floorboard. The second one, Charles was on the floor, on his back, bleeding out, still able to move, and we know that because he had blood on his left hand, and he was executed as he lay there on the ground. In that time, when we talk about premeditation and reflection, as Adam had to move his hand down, reposition the gun, and discharge and pull the trigger one more time, that is premeditated first-degree murder, no matter what you believe before that. Again, when we talk about that physical evidence, we saw the fact that the location of that bullet defect in the ground matched right under Charles's left shoulder. And we heard from Dr. Baumgartner. Dr. Baumgartner told you that this was a classic shored wound. And no matter how many questions could be asked about him of maybe a bamboo shirt might stop a bullet in one location but not in another, or how many matrix-like hypotheticals where maybe Charles bounced back up and then on his way down, the bullet slowed down through him and waited till he hit the ground again before it exited. Dr. Baumgartner told you, no, those hypotheticals, those issues did not make sense. He's never seen a t-shirt stop a bullet in one location or at all. And we know Charles didn't bounce because we know he had no injuries to the back of his head. This also tells us a little bit about the shooting itself. When Charles was shot that first time through center mast, he did not fall straight back and land onto the ground, laying there on his back. If he had, he would have had bruising, abrasions on the back of his head when he hit the ground. He didn't have anything on the back of his head. Where did he have abrasions? On his knees. When he fell to the ground after being shot, do we know how long it took him to roll over, to fall onto his back, before he was then shot a second time because he's still alive? You heard it could take up to 2 minutes for Charles to have died, and then he could have spoke and moved during that time period. What we do know is that he eventually ended up on his back. And while he was on his back is when he was shot the second time by Alex. This defendant and her brother in that house waiting and making sure that Charles was dead, murdered, executed. Words, actions, motive, and physical evidence all tell you what happened that morning. So let's talk about conspiracy and I know there are a lot of layers here, and I'm just building them up for you. You're told in your jury instructions that conspiracy requires proof. One, the defendant agreed with one or more persons that one of them or another would engage in certain conduct. So again, we look to Lori Vallow's words. What she had been talking about for months, Charles being possessed, being dark, wanting to kill him, the discussion on June 9th, poisoning him or drugging him previously. And then when we got to July 9th, it is all coming to a head. We will be like Nephi. Her actions, having Charles come to the house, instead of him staying there, she had him stay away. Why? Because if Charles stayed at the house, couldn't have Alex come over with a gun and be ready to shoot him, right? You got to have him come in. Her actions of inviting her brother over with a gun the night before so he would be there. She knew when he would show up. He texted her, "I'll be there at 7:30, pick up JJ." But most importantly, why did Charles stay in the house? Lori told the detective that Charles initially was like, "Oh, I'll just stay here for 20 minutes and then I'll take JJ to school." Well, she wasn't going to kill him in front of JJ. No, take JJ to Burger King. Get him out of the house. Go put him in the car. And he does that. But then she takes his phone. And she won't give it back. What she told the detective was, before this alleged Tylee bat, whatever thing you want to talk about there, that she had Charles's phone and was asking him about texting Adam. Of course, that's interesting because how would she have known that? But we know she had the phone actually for a while before she did that interview. She tells the detective numerous times that Charles is telling her to give him back his phone, and she will not. That she's walking around. He's trying to get the phone. She won't give it to him. Why? Because she needs Alex to come out. He brought that gun over for a reason. So she agreed with one or more persons, her brother, Alex, that she intended to promote or assist the commission of such conduct. Well, of course, we know both the promote, she is the one who on the 9th said, "We will be like Nephi. It's time to stop this whole thing. Charles trying to take my temple recommend, all this stuff that's going on, time to kill him." And of course, she assists by ensuring that Charles stays in the house when she takes that phone. And of course, they knew that it would constitute first-degree murder. That's what Nephi did. Only unlike Nephi, where it was justified, here, ladies and gentlemen, this murder was not justified. Finally, think about the demeanor when you're thinking about, again, words, actions, motive, and demeanor. When Lori comes back to the house, she is very, what did we hear that word? Many times, nonchalant, calm. No questions about her brother, no questions about her husband, no questions about the house, just laughing about her neighbors. She is in absolute agreement with what has happened. She knows what's happened and she's calm and good with it because she doesn't need to repent. She is able to determine who should live and die, and she has done that. So when we talk of the scope of conspiracy, you're told that to prove a conspiracy, it is not necessary to show a formal meeting or express agreement. But we see that from the 9th, in that conversation that she and Alex had, where she tells him, "You are going to have to stay near me for the next couple days, and we will be like Nephi." You're also told that a conspiracy may be inferred from circumstances showing a common criminal objective. So, just because you don't have someone who says, "I heard them say, we shall conspire," you can infer that from the conduct. The conduct of what happened on the 9th, the conduct of what happened on the 10th, and the conduct of what happened on the 11th. All infer to you a conspiracy of Alex coming over with his gun to shoot and kill Charles. As we again look at this in this conspiracy, again, we're looking at the same words and actions. March, Charles is no longer there. There's just an evil spirit in his body. June, Charles is still possessed, and now Alex is saying he wants to kill him. Lori is fine with this, and she says she's drugging him, or had been drugging him. And then 2 weeks before, all of a sudden Charles knows Lori's been having this affair. Lori's words, actions, motive, and the physical evidence. Conspiracy again, we see that Lori and Alex know exactly when Charles is showing up. Alex doesn't go to the door according to Lori and confront Charles or tell him we'll send JJ out and you can leave with him. The world is so difficult. How hard would that be? Bring JJ right to the door and let him leave with his dad. No, you aren't going to shoot him outside. You want to make it look like self-defense inside. As you go through this and we think about what's going on, the defendant doesn't even care. She wants her husband killed so bad that she's willing to let her brother bring over a loaded gun in an unlocked gun case in a house with a 7-year-old autistic child. That's fine. When the defendant was questioning Detective Enclen, she was talking about how hot it was outside. JJ's out in the car. But she has no problem with an unlocked gun in the house with the kid, and she's worried about her child out in the car? She's not. We know that because she's the reason Charles doesn't go back out into the car and leave. She keeps him there in the house. She is why JJ's out in the car alone. She has to keep him there until Alex comes out and can shoot and kill him. When we talk about that premeditation, obviously we're talking about that message. We know from the 9th on, they are premeditated, they are conspiring, and it's all heading to July 11th. We look at the timing of this, and this is actions and non-actions. Charles is in the house for 12 minutes. After those 12 minutes, they wait 47 more minutes before they call 911. Why? To stage the scene. No CPR is performed. They wait for Charles to be dead, and then they talk during this time period. They talk. They could call 911, but nope, they're going to just talk. So again, you're looking at their actions, what happened and didn't happen, and the motives. There's the gun that was used to kill Charles. We're going to go through a couple of these exhibits, some of what Lori said, and it's exhibits 192 and 197, where she again says that Charles came over and said he was just going to hang out at the house for like 20 minutes, take JJ to school. She, of course, tells him to go, and when JJ is out in the car, she has Charles's phone, and she won't give it back. And no matter how much she says that Charles is screaming at her to give the phone back, she won't. And all of this conversation about Charles demanding the phone back is prior to her statement to Detective Enclin that Tylee comes out with this fact. This is all her doing. This is her as an accomplice assisting and promoting this murder. Lori is setting up Charles so Alex can shoot him.
And with JJ? And
So he put them in the car,
Okay.
in the driveway, and then he came back in, right? So I kissed JJ goodbye. He came back in, and his phone was on the counter, and I had his phone. And he was like, giving me my phone, and I was like, why don't you show me your text that you've been texting, blah, 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 you know, whatever. Because he's like acting really weird, like he's plotting something against me. Like, I'm like, why are you even here? Like, what did you come here for, you know? He's been talking to my other brother, and my brother came into town at the same time last night. And I haven't talked to my brother in a while, my other brother, and I was like, and so he was texting him on the phone when he first got to my house, and I'm like, why are you texting Adam? Like, do you even talk to him? Like, my other brother.
So when you listen to these clips and the interview of Lori Vallow, you have to put into context, this is 9:52 in the morning when this part of this interview is occurring. And she's telling the detective that she confronts Charles about texting her brother Adam. Now, she's had the 47 minutes she's been driving around, and then that time at the house when she's waiting outside to learn all of those texts and what's been going on between her brother and Adam and Charles. And so she is now mixing this in to her interview. And so when you're listening to her interview, we know she's trying to work out this, what happened, how did this go? You can watch her demeanor as well. And as you're going through this, see how she's just telling a story here, like what happened, almost chuckling about it.
Okay. So this morning he comes back in and...
He comes back in, I wouldn't give him his phone, he was screaming at me to give him his phone. He was very worried about whatever was on his text that he did not want me to see. And so I was just holding it there, and he was screaming at me. And I was kind of walking towards around the house with it, so he couldn't get it. He's like reaching for it and stuff like that.
So again, JJ's in the car, Tylee's not out, Alex isn't out, and she is making sure that he doesn't leave. She's walking around the house, holding his phone, refusing to give it to him, making sure her autistic child is sitting out in the car even longer so that she can ensure that exactly what they've been planning happens, that Alex has time to come out with the gun that he brought over and shoot and kill Charles. This defendant is the only reason why Charles didn't leave with JJ. This defendant is the one who provoked Charles by taking his phone and refusing to get it back. This defendant is the one who ensured that Charles was inside without JJ so Alex could shoot him. And this defendant is the person who set up Charles so that her brother Alex could shoot him. So let's talk about staging the scene. We know obviously from the first responders that when they arrived, no CPR was given. You heard from Officer Wierzbecki that when he felt Charles's neck, he thought he was dead already, but they still let the first responders in because they've been told CPR had been given. And what do we know? That they arrived within a few minutes. No one had ever tried to save Charles. No blood had been pushed out of him from CPR, whether strong or light. He had been dead for quite a while. His skin was mottled when they started cutting open his shirt and looking to the back, and lividity, the blood pooling, was occurring already. So they kind of knew something was off with that timeline. So what about the scene itself? The bat. It is placed to the right of Charles to look like he was using it. He got shot and it went flying behind him. Well, obviously we've heard from Kay, Charles's sister, that he was left-handed. We know from the blood evidence on his hand, he was left-handed. There's no damage to that mirror. There's no damage to the drywall. There's no damage anywhere, like this bat is being swung around in this horrific fight that's going on of grappling. The injury to Alex Cox's head. You heard it was a small 1-inch cut that he was using a paper towel to pat and at times, as we watch that Exhibit 1, rubbing it, making sure it stays bleeding. There is no blood at the scene from this giant grappling thing going on that Lori Vallow wanted them to believe. His head is bleeding and they're grappling around and he's being beat with this bat, and yet not one drop of blood on the floor. Not one drop of blood going down the hallway when he put that gun away. Not one drop of blood on the gun itself. And then the shoes, left by the door to look like Lori Vallow had run out in fear after this horrific incident that they planned. What we know from the Walgreens video is that she did enter the store with shoes, something on her feet. So we're going to go through. We know Charles, again, left-handed.
Field with your brother.
Yeah.
What position did your brother play?
He was a pitcher. He was very, very good. He was a left-handed pitcher, and they're very hard to hit against.
Okay. Did he bat right or left-handed?
He was left-handed.
Did he do everything left-handed?
Yes.
Right, left-handed? So we know that Charles batted left-handed, not right-handed. And what we know is Lori Vallow had a story about how Charles was using that bat. And it becomes very important as well when we're talking about the staging of the scene. This is Exhibit 193.
Yeah, she was outside,
And then
and
what happened?
then they got up from that, and my brother had like stepped back, I guess, and then Charles was coming with me at the bat and yelling at me to give him his phone still, because I had it in my hand. It was all really quickly, and then when I went around kind of in the circle, then my brother was there.
When you said when you were going around and he was coming at you with the bat, how was he holding the bat?
Just like that, like backwards, almost in one arm.
Like he was swinging it backwards? He would have done like
Like he would have swung it backwards at me, not frontwards.
okay.
So Lori Vallow, detective, and planned that Charles is swinging the bat backwards. Now, if the bat was like this when he was shot, his arm would have been shot. Covers his center mass. So we know he wasn't here. So if he's out here, where would the bat go? Down? Out? Somewhere that way to his left. It would not end up thrown up above him. And if it wasn't there again, Charles would have been shot through the arm. Obviously, Alex forgot that Charles was left-handed. So when he placed that, like he was coming at him with a bat, their stories didn't quite match up with the evidence. So if we rely on Lori's story of how Charles was holding the bat, then there's zero way that that bat would end up where it ended up. And again, we know he's left-handed from not only Kay, but his own admissions of that blood on his hand. So we see the scene is staged, this bat that is so necessary to try to ensure this justified killing is legally justified and not just spiritually justified. When we talk about the scene as well, and you're looking at where Charles was, at least when that second shot went through him, you can see in the photograph to the right, the shot to Charles's chest, right between his nipples, and the shot to Charles's abdomen, down lower. We know that that first shot through his chest, that Charles would have been facing a little more towards the open area there where we see the hallway and the kitchen. We know that because there was the bullet trajectory Detective Cruz told you about that entered that far east wall. We know there was stippling, and so the defendant would have been, well, her brother would have been within 2 to 4 feet of the muzzle of that gun, within Charles 2 to 4 feet. We know from the lack of that injury to the back of his head that he didn't fall straight back. We know from the blood on his hand that he was still alive after he was shot. And we know the lack of stippling for that shot to his abdomen and that trajectory, and even the defendant's own statements that she saw her brother at Charles's feet, that he would have stood there at Charles's feet when he fired that second shot as he was laying on the floor. You have the bat, Exhibit 249. You can look at the edge of it. You see the photograph of the edge of it. There is no blood and no damage to this bat. Regardless of how many times the defendant was hoping that blood was invisible, we have all cut ourselves and seen that blood is red. And there was no blood on this bat. There is no blood on this bat. There is no damage to this bat. So you have a semi-professional baseball player who has a bat in his hand, and he sees someone with a gun and he doesn't beat him with it, take his head off with it, knock him unconscious with it. Instead, all we see on this bat is 0 damage and 2 partial prints. No prints of a body or smushed skin on it, someone that's sweating from a fight that's left a large arm print on it or anything else. Nope, just 2 partial little prints on it. When you think about what is there and what isn't there, does the evidence of this bat fit in at all? It doesn't. We look at Charles's watch. No damage to it, no scratches to it, no dings to it as he's grappling on the floor like Lori wants you to believe. We know that at some point Charles is standing and shot, and we know that final shot he's on the ground. We know he fell to his knees at some point. And when you look at that physical evidence and the lack of damage or anything on that bat, again, what makes sense is that Charles fell to his knees after that first shot. We know that there is 12 minutes where the defendant and her brother are still together there, so that Alex can get this 1-inch cut to the back of his head that's barely bleeding, that he uses a paper towel to dab at and rub. The shoes that the defendant ran out of on her way out. You have the exhibit. You can see black straps across her toes as she enters and exits the Walgreens. And then you see that she's wearing the flip-flops when she comes back to the scene. What do we know? That the police did not search Charles's rental car.